The heart knows, and it knows the actions to which one must take, and the brain is what will think, what needs to think about how to go about for that knowledge of action. So of course, yes, as I've spoken before, the brain must work with the heart. We're dealing this matter often when we're talking about helping family or friends reach realizations of our own that we do see as impactful, that we do see as important to us in our day-to-day life. Stuff that we can't ignore because we realize, yes, we have to share this with them. Yes, we realize it will impact them. We want them to see a reality, perhaps, a new light, at least a new perspective, at least an open mind, at least maybe even some of the simple things before reaching the more complex things. And indeed, that is often the case, especially in this so-called truth community. So, we have that to address. And folks should tend to their family and friends. Folks realize that they should. Some feel completely hopeless. We're going to explore exactly what I mean by this here today. So, there is anger, righteous, as we've spoken of before. Many cases where you have to express that discontentedness with the world. Does that mean you express it to family and friends? Does that mean it will work toward your appeal to them and to understand the same knowledge as you? That it does not. Not necessarily. And so, there's something I will call unnecessary anger. A lot of anarchists, may you say, I'm going to say true principled anarchists, real human beings who simply want to share this knowledge of natural law, natural rights, whatever it may be among the lines of some sort of universal, eternal truths beyond the mainstream political spectrum or mainstream, whatever is being told to them, conformists, you get the deal. So, being able to see past that. It's important to know that, yes, when you are an outcast of society, you see things that those folks do not. You know, your family and your friends may not see those things. You might grow angry with some of the things they say. You might grow angry of their defiance. You might grow angry of all the things that are involved in that situation. Is it rightful? Yes, it's rightful anger. Does that mean it should be expressed? Well, it's a natural emotion. It shouldn't be suppressed, right? So it should not. Because anger could help many people into realizing, wait, my son is angry. Wait, my family member is angry. Why is he angry? That can help me open my eyes and see, well, maybe, he's in pain for me and my realizations that I need to see his point of view. But not all people will see it that way. Because I've heard many times before, especially in these communities, of folks saying, oh, well, I can't get my family to do this, I can't do... A lot of these excuses, if you will. Now, and you could have tried hard, in the past to try to convey your point, but you must understand it is a constant striving. It isn't just something that you expect them to immediately come to the realization that you have. Because everybody has some varying degree of understanding. And certainly there's always some sort of truth that they do understand. Otherwise they wouldn't be human. Otherwise they wouldn't be happy in their own life. Because like I've said in previous podcasts, everybody seeks freedom. Thus, if somebody's happy, they likely have some sort of freedom in their life. Some sort of thing that they thrive on based in truth. Because truth is freedom, and freedom brings truth. It brings morality. It brings all that is good. It brings potential to do whatever you want, and thus go on vacations, thus do this, do that. It's potential, it's open-mindedness, it's imagination, it's creativity. So there is this succumbing to the fate that I see within this community of many individuals. And you may be one who is watching this, or listening, rather, and that is perfectly fine. But do we really let that consume us? Do we really let it go and move on to somebody else? Because if it's somebody we care about, somebody we deal with in a day-to-day life, don't give up on it. Now, even if it is a stranger, why give up on it? Give it time, plant the seed. See, there's never, ever a choice to give up in a scenario, especially if all human beings are your friends. Aren't they? Or should they? Then we must be the change. You must be as if you are their friend at all times, regardless of what they think. You know, it's the expression, treat with tenderness, kill with kindness. And the reason why that is said is because it's sort of this reverse psychology that makes somebody come to a realization like, oh shoot, they got me at my own behalf. I expected them to rage out and get all mad at me, but they didn't. They didn't feed into it. They actually accepted me for where I was. And they simply perhaps ask questions, or they simply have their own point of view that they're not pushing on me. Do you see those things when you talk to somebody? Because if you have to, rewind it a little bit to see what I did there. But subtle ways, different ways. Obviously, if you keep doing and you keep getting what you keep getting. So this is all brainstorming for your mental health and the mental health of those around you. Because that's ultimately what it is, right? Especially when it comes to the acceptance of knowledge and the very simple ability to listen to what you have to say, which is where I see most people's complaints are. It's not even on the knowledge itself, but rather the time and attention dedicated toward what you have to share. So one of the biggest things I talk about with this is providing the environment. You know, if you give them palm trees and oceans and, you know, they feel like they have no crazy job obligations and watching TV and all these distractions, their phone rings and text messages and there's books everywhere and so forth. You escape all that, you go to a more natural environment. Oh no, your mind is suddenly clear. You're suddenly present. But when I say environment, it could be any environment that best suits that person. It could be you and them together, just alone. It could be having a certain food, like chocolate, that is a mood enhancer, sharing a recipe, sharing gifts at a special time, anything that brings you together in a right environment for the information to be brought up and thus not to be destructive and not turn into an argument, right? Because that's what you're trying to prevent. You're trying to share information and you want the receiver to be open to it. You want there to be attention and thus investment into what you have to say. So there's the need of freedom. The freedom of saying, yes, my family understands my pain. They finally understand the knowledge that I have acquired. They finally have become anarchists. They finally have realized the freedom that we need that isn't in politics. You get this internal sense of freedom, going back to the idea of how everybody wants freedom. It's in you too. So your rage is thus in the need of freedom. Okay? But don't succumb to the rage, and don't succumb to the fate. Don't succumb to either. Why should you succumb to anything? You use all things as a tool, as a resource, as a means to only further empower yourself. You ultimately decide what comes of what goes through you. You should know this with information, right? The learning bell curve. Why should you fall to any extreme? No. You need to have your head high, your conscience clear, into being open-minded and thus making the appeal that is necessary for the individual and not falling to your own emotion, which you know so many people are mind controlled with. So why should you do so for yourself? That is where unnecessary anger is. Because as all things, there's a time and place for everything, but it's not all the time that one emotion can persist. You can't be happy all the time. You can try to be happy all the time, but you have to express some remorse sometimes. You have to express some sadness. It's part of life, as with every emotion, and thus righteous anger is not always righteous. It can be very destructive in many cases. This is just the truth to the nature of emotions. And so I would hope for folks to come to understand that. This is why I say nature is the answer. It's not just some simple trees and, whatever it is. It's actually understanding the nature of why things are the way they are. Why things act the way they act. And so that's what I've explored here, and I've already given you many different ideas among this. Now, another problem I notice with this, and this cannot go ignored because it definitely has been troubling me as somebody within this community. Folks believe it is moral to be vegan. They believe it is just because everybody else is doing, or because it is, under this jurisdiction of justification and whatnot. I have explored this subject deeply in the videos specifically titled Tearing Apart Moral Veganism. And I state this only because if you are vegan, maybe even vegetarian, but pretty much only vegan, because vegetarians still getting all the nutrients they need for their brain health. You can see where I'm going with this. Vegans can't get over 15 nutrients from plants. And while you can get some B vitamins from plants, B vitamins are especially important for brain health. Look at the connection between B vitamins and depression. You do the research yourself and tell me what you come up with. Do the research on vegetarians, vegans, and depression. Do the research yourself, see what you come up with. Because most of the time you'll see there's a lot of brain problems, mental problems, for short. You can take all these supplements and stuff in the world, obviously not the most natural, but you need to understand that your anger, your lack of ability to control your own emotions, your ability to focus and thus have more of an open mind and thus share more information is all affected by your mental capacity and cognitive function. So it is important that you don't fall to these religions and you address your situation. You can be B vitamin deficient even if you eat meat products, in fact, because you're cooking it a lot, and those B vitamins are lost immediately because B vitamins are water soluble. So, I don't know, raw milk, raw meat products, it is a potential thing, very natural, but you will definitely get way more nutrition through any sort of meat product, rather than doing veganism. Okay, and this is simply by, again, the nature of veganism. You're not going to get those B vitamins, especially B12, and that's why they're all taking that supplement, and it is the most prescribed supplement in all of the nation, if not the world. B12. And then you wonder why people lack energy, and why most vegans are on caffeine, and, but it's perfectly vegan, so it's fine. Again, address your health for what it is, health. It is not determined specifically by one term we call veganism, just as natural law is not determined specifically by the one word we call veganism, or any one thing, for any one matter. Okay? Nature is this complex ecosystem that needs to be understood if it wants to be worked with. And it's very prone to mistakes. Life is delicate. It needs to be handled with respect. The heart is delicate. You have to handle it with respect. Anger is not going to work for most people. Why do you think there's a lot of people who are turned off by it? It is a natural emotion for somebody to want care and love, especially in the world like now, when most of the love is artificial or it's not fulfilling. And then you see the divorce rates. No wonder why people are desperate, or if they're not desperate, you know, they completely deny it. So let's get that straight. You know, human beings have this internal want for love and for freedom. Do not deny that, and thus find it within your own words. Find it within yourself. I can't say for you of your fate and what you have to say. Again, it isn't up to me, it's up to you, but these pointers are generally universal. So you have to question, and I have to question on behalf of you. Pain in the 21st century? Really? Is it really that hard to accept the fact that other people have these political opinions, even if they're completely statist and completely shut down to your mind? When more than likely you're not impoverished, you're not poor, you're not starving, and you're in the modern conveniences of life. Yes, I'm sure you have some grievances, but look at the path, dear person, because the past has been way worse, and then look at the path, the future. It will be much worse. It's either you prepare yourself now, or you're going to succumb even further. But you cannot ever put that in your mind that you will succumb, because that's the problem. The fact that you're willing to do that shows you do not have the willpower to truly fight for truth, as you may claim that you do. Your anger is not going to help you when it comes to fighting for truth. It is not fighting for truth to just express anger. In fact, it can very well do the opposite, as I've described. It can very well deter your appeal. It's not going to work with everybody. Of course, I'm expressing passion here, and that could be distinguished from anger. My intentions matter. Am I angry yelling at you? Or am I helping you come up with strategies? And then how are you receiving it? There's so many dependencies involved, and thus, of course, I'm not also talking to you face to face. So you can't say that I'm making you angry. Because again, you are the receiver. It's ultimately up to you anyways. And thus, the same for the people that you talk to, and you can make those disclaimers in the beginning. You feel like there's some stigmas around what you have to say. You make that in the beginning of your statement. You say, will you be mad at me if I tell you the truth? Am I allowed to talk to you about anything? You be clear and front about it. You address it. Because by getting that grounding foundation, how else can you plant the seed without it? You have to have that foundation. The soil must be there, full of minerals, full of vitamins. Okay? The health, the environment, the conditions, all of it. May sound like a lot, but it's actually rather simple. Just do not succumb to your emotions. Be open-minded, listen, and respond accordingly. Ask questions. Do not be in pain. This is often you want to blame it on other people. This happens a lot, and I hear it a lot. You want to blame it on other people. Say, they're the problem, they're the statist. You know what they're doing too, right? They're blaming it on you. You're the anarchist, you're crazy. How does it help to fight something that you will ultimately become? David Icke has talked about this in his book. I could put it on the screen perhaps. And if it's not on the screen, you could go to NITA.ONE/advanced perspective. There's a slide for David Icke's book talking about making sure that you're not using violence to achieve your means, because it's counterintuitive. And there's many things that are counterintuitive. And he goes over hate versus love. There's a reason why these are diametrically opposed or seen as such. Because love is a feeding force that feeds into love, the heart. What is anger going to feed into? Tons of worries of the mind? Thoughts. Which we know the mind will conflict with the heart. And the mind will create barriers. The heart opens the gate. You have to start each intention with heart, with care, with love, to share information. You know care is a generative principle, so you cannot say anger is a generative principle, because it is not. So pain in the 21st century. Why do we feel that? We're in the 21st century with modern day innovations, with technology, with everything at our abundance. I have to ask you, why do you feel that? Why do you succumb to it? And this is something I could drill into your head, because if you are somebody who's expressed anger, and you likely are the person who's watching this video because you clicked on it to listen more, do I have to drill it into your head that you can be okay? That you don't need to feel pain in this century? Why should you? That you actually can help prepare others to get out of that pain for themselves, and thus alleviate your own pain by helping others directly, instead of succumbing in your own fate all day, thinking about it and worrying about it all day, staying in fear, which is negative natural law expression, the very thing that you say you fight. It is absurd to do that. And thus, I do want to fight that hypocrisy. I do want to fight such deception. We have to work with ourselves in order to work with the world. We have to work with ourselves in order to work with the truth. It is only the requirement. You cannot surpass that. You have to. Just like I said, you have to respect the body. Otherwise, you can't go to work because you're ill, because you can't move, because you're so stressed. You can't now tend to your family. And soon, everything starts tearing apart because you lost the foundation. You lost the simple things that eventually helped build the complex things, and you got so mixed up in this web of the tree, of the hive tree, that you forgot the stalk, the roots that brought you there. And thus you fall back down, and you have to rise back up from the beginning because you forgot the roots. Don't forget, if you're dealing with your parents, they raised you. Okay? Think of your roots. If you're dealing with a friend, how did you meet? Why are they your friend? If you're doubting them for being your friend, I mean, think about it. Why were they your friend? Surely there was some reason. Surely there is some heart in them. How do you invoke that? How do you use it? How do you show it? It's all possible. Remember, freedom and possibility go hand in hand. You say, well, freedom comes first. No, no. Again, be the change. Show that it's possible. And freedom all of a sudden erupts. Create the freedom of an environment. And that possibility erupts. And by erupts, of course, I mean it expands, it manifests. You want the possibility of somebody giving an apology. You want the possibility of somebody fixing themselves or realizing the knowledge that you've been wanting to share with them. I would hope so, right? So, we must begin to prepare ourselves for what's to come. So, this is why I say, start with yourself when it comes to this idea of anger. In any case, unnecessary or not, you have to start with yourself and question, is the anger really righteous in this scenario or not? I can't express it all the time. I can't succumb to my fate and just deny what needs to be done. Otherwise, what type of truth warrior am I? See, truth warriors are needed for what's ahead, because of all the distress, because of everything that will happen, inevitably, just with time. So it's all a matter of circumstance and environment, its condition. If you ground yourself, you prepare yourself, you're ready for anything. But are you really ready for anything? Of course, when push comes to shove, nobody's really ready for anything. But you would likely be far more prepared than anybody else if you've done this mental work already. Into saying that you won't give up. Into saying that, by seeing that I've brought faith into others, by seeing that I've helped others, I help myself. You've put the experience out there, you've experienced it, and thus you know it to be true. Because so many people who do complain just haven't experienced enough of these miracles to then see the light that they can utilize in that dark cavern. It's like starting a fire. You can just give up, but once you see that fire happening, you want to keep going. But you have to first think about starting the fire. It's not going to be easy, but once you do it, it's amazing. And that's with any great experience in life. That's with any great bravery. Is you have to face the fears, and once you do it, you say, wow, how did I get here? Incredible. But you did it because out of willpower, out of clear conscience in deciding, yes, this is what I'll do. It's determinism at best, which natural law is definitely among. So, if you want to work with natural law, you have to work with yourself. It's a requirement. For natural law is but the perception of man through which nature's actions are perceived. Okay? It's not just some standalone idea. It's dependent on human beings and our perceptions. Does it care about our perceptions? No, but technically it does. Because it dictates our actions. Thus, what you put care into, even the knowledge itself, you will seek better alignment with it. Your actions will be more fit for what you desire. So, see it as such. The world is not such a cold, dead place, and some will call me an optimist in seeing the world so good and so forth. I never said it was. But am I going to complain? What good does that do me to complain? What good does it do me to say, there's nothing I can do, I've tried everything. I've tried that already. Oh, there's no way I can do it. That doesn't help anything. That doesn't change anything. If somebody is dying and is in need of healing, you say, anyway, I can best heal the body, I will do it. I will go by all means, find the best treatment, and I will heal myself. But you have to give yourself the faith that you can heal yourself. And thus, if you're healing somebody else, the same thing goes with that. A doctor who truly cares for their patient, or a daughter that truly cares for its mother. It's just the way things are supposed to be. People are supposed to care for one another. So if that is natural, if that is for, again, natural law and generative principle, then we must be as such. So don't become what you're fighting, and don't have the lack of worth and value, because once you put in the work, you'll see the value. You see the worth. And others will start to see it too, if you show them, if you share it with them, but not always the way you may think. Sometimes it has to be more direct. This is it in action. I'm going to talk to my friend. I'm going to bring two friends together. This person is more open-minded, this person is not, but since they're friends together, I'm going to show my friend who is in more denial, I'm going to show them, their friend, talking to me and how open-minded they are to what I have to say. And then the new realization comes into place because you brought in a third party. You brought in a new perspective, which I did speak of, did I not, 10 minutes ago in this podcast, about how you have to do that in order to achieve something new, something that is more of the desired. What's wrong with opening more discussion? What's wrong with speaking your mind? And the answer is, there isn't. Unless, of course, the intention is straight up out wrong, because you're putting in so much anger and fire into it in a room that is just not ready for it. If somebody is going to control a fire, there has to be the control of the fire. They don't want the fire to spread out of hand. Thus, you must prepare the environment. You must create a bonfire, clear out the rest of the trees so you can put the bonfire exactly where it is, in the exact location, so it cannot spread any further and everybody is content with it. You must do the same when you make any demonstration. Right timing, right deliverance, right feelings, anything. Same with the speech, same with the talk of a podcast, right? And you want to go on a show, it has to look good, it has to be professional, it has to be with the right attire, it has to be, because you realize the importance of environment. So do not just discount this when it comes to conversation, because the same things apply. You ask, why are humans so needy? Why do humans ask for all these things? I can't answer that question because I ask the same thing all the time. Why can't people be more open? But see, the thing is, it's because of the world around them. So why succumb to the world around them? If you want to free them from that world, you have to show them the exact opposite. So, lack of worth and value? No. Show the exact opposite if you realize what the truth can do. If you realize what the truth can do. Thus, put it in action and you'll see. Put it in action and you'll see. When I say put it in action, find the right people. Create the conversations. Go to the communities that will respect that knowledge, that will do something with that knowledge, maybe build community gardens out of it, maybe, bring it to others, free children from their bonds of any slavery that still exists, and provide people with working, whatever it may be, any form of bringing freedom to people, and you realize this is what it's about, and all this political jargon is just nonsense. Why can't we look at the basis of it? It doesn't matter. You don't even have to use these political terms to make an appeal to somebody, so they get mad and they feel like they have to make everything political. You show them it never had to be. It never is important to be. And they can realize that themselves. You don't have to tell them that either. Right? So, how direct do you have to be? You don't have to be so direct. You might want to be. Some people do like that direct face-to-face, tell me like it is, especially here in the north and near New York. I know people down south in the United States, they're definitely more chill, they're more relaxed. They take things a little laid back. They don't want it just as it is and telling it right to their face. They might get offended. I'm not sure. But then again, they're also, very caring people. So, it's a culture, it's environment, and thus I cannot give you a direct answer. But I do know one thing, and that is to be the exact opposite of what society is telling you to do. If society is telling you to be, super productive and eat your fruits and vegetables and make sure you have a job and make sure that this and that, question that and say, is that really natural of me to do? It's natural for me to be with my family. It's natural to share information I know is truthful. Right? So why should I follow information that isn't natural? You got to follow your heart in this process, like I said in the beginning. So I don't complain. I only keep seeking appeal. And that is my final point here. So you do the exact opposite of the deception that is put into the world when you realize what the truth can do. And you don't complain. Complaining never helps. Telling about the state in the world and is not complaining. It is reporting. Some may think it is negative, but they're the ones taking it in a negative connotation if you're simply speaking on behalf of what's going on. So, speak as if it is. And if you have to, make the disclaimer that you are. Because, of course, some will take offense to your words sometimes, right? You mention something at the dinner table, somebody gets mad at what you said, but if you just say it straightly and confidentially, it may not be a problem at all. And if it is, you seek to dismiss it immediately. And you try to bring it back to the roots, back to an understandable nature, not any more deep into the manifestations where it will continue any sort of argument. Catch them by surprise. Again, kill with kindness, train with tenderness, whatever. So, keep seeking appeal. Do not give up on it. There's many folks who I talk to, I don't expect them to get the knowledge right away. I give it time. But through knowing them and through, them realizing how I approach this gently and not so abrasively, which may be also required, they respect that. So not only is it required, it is more respectful. And thus, everything that requires more time is of the great work. Think about it. Whether it's a sculpture, a painting, any sort of creative form of art or masterpiece requires time. Time is the requirement. And thus, that is the cost, right? It's the spiritual currency. So don't forget that when you're in your conversation with folks. If you're angry, you're trying to say something to the point, getting right to it, tons of fire, it's so direct, and it burns everything down to the ground so quickly. But something that is not so abrasive, maybe just releasing a little bit of fire at a time. It takes more time to burn, but it gets it thoroughly done. And it builds up over time, and it can be easily controlled, and thus it will be easily more recognized. It won't cause a mass amount of problems. That is the fire that you want to see. It's a balance of all elements. Of course, as I've mentioned, grounding, that would be earth. Right? So, of course, it's all elements. It's all within nature. No coincidence there at all. So, that concludes this podcast, talking about anarchists and unnecessary anger, and their succumbing and rage in need of freedom. I thank you for listening. Please, 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 do not ever doubt yourself, put yourself down, and do not also blame it on others and put them down. Be the very opposite of what you should want to do. And thus, you give your sacrifice of your own time and energy and attention. And will it benefit you? Will it always benefit you? No, of course not. You give it time, allocation of resources, realizing where you could put it. The truth is the truth. It will always prevail. But it is dependent on the messenger. Because one must first see it before they can deliver. And one must first know it before they can act. So, do those things. Be thorough with your approach. But be simple at mind. Going to the depths of politics and modern day events can crowd out from some of the most simplest things that you can mention that would actually make somebody's day. That would actually prevent all arguments. That would actually get right to the root cause so much quicker. And may you say that's the approach with simply understanding that nature is the answer? I would say that it is. And I don't mean to speak on behalf of it being so important as it is, but like I said, it simply is. Because you can't get anything more natural or more rooted than that. So use it as the bridge toward helping somebody realize something more. Right? When you cross a bridge, you were first on the land that you were recognizing, and when you soon cross the bridge, you soon open into a whole nother land. A whole nother area, perhaps you've never explored before, or at least a new area that you weren't previously in. And thus bridges must be formed. Whether it is in health, whether it is in attention, environment, all of it will come together, and so address it. Because I'm sure you have to deal with all those aspects, and it will come of your eye after listening to this, what that will be when you observe the environment that somebody is in. If they're on their phone or on their television, you should know, after listening to this, what I've said on behalf of that. But also of your own intuition that anger doesn't have its place everywhere. And your rage, why should it ever be put out on somebody you would care for? It shouldn't be put out on them. It should be put out into the world. And the world to which they can feel that anger and realize that you are in pain of some kind. But if you're not in pain, actual pain, but you do want to feel the pain of others and feel the pain of what's happening in the world, you can share that with your family by simply speaking on behalf of what it is, seeing their reaction on behalf of it, then expressing how you feel about it thereafter and in relation to what they've said, and thus connecting the point in a rather gradual fashion. It will be the least invasive because you're working with them instead of telling them what to do. It's guiding rather than being authoritative. Something I would hope anybody who doesn't want this control of society rather to be voluntary, right? Somebody should want to be in conversation with you. Somebody should want to talk to you longer. Thus, make it all voluntary. Create the desire to talk with you. Create the connection between themselves and the knowledge before you even speak on behalf of it. Let them speak more on behalf of it for themselves rather than you. Hopefully some of this may have helped you. I thank you for listening. This is Corey Angelat. Nature's the answer. Be free.